Hello everybody! It's time to talk about what else I saw in July! Although technically I don't think that I reviewed any movies last month, so a more appropriate title for this would just be What I Saw in July! I've got lots of stuff to talk about, so let's dive right in. Movie number 1 is a film from 1962 and a viewer recommendation, David and Lisa, a psychological drama in which a young man who can't stand to be touched, Keir Dalia, is dropped off by his mother at a home for the mentally ill, run by a kindly psychiatrist played by Howard Da Silva. David is intelligent and analytical, but he's also a hostile, cynical person who has little patience or compassion for others. Yet by some miracle, he connects with Lisa, a girl played by Janet Margolin, who, as the film puts it, has schizophrenia and will only communicate in rhyme. She's probably the most troubled individual at the school, but David befriends her and she becomes attached to him. The result is a very sweet, moving story about two outsiders finding a way to connect and learning to understand each other. The psychology is not overdone, nor are David's nightmare sequences overplayed. I enjoyed it. Movie number 2 is a noir from 1950 directed by Anthony Mann, Side Street. Farley Granger stars as a city mailman with a baby on the way and a desire to move out of his in-laws' house, who makes a fateful decision to steal a couple $100. The problem is he gets much more than he bargained for, $30,000, and it's hot money. He ends up in deep trouble, running around the city wanted by the police and the crooks whose money he stole, while his saintly wife, Kathy O'Donnell, recovers from childbirth. It's the agonizing type of noir where you're telling the main character from the beginning, "Don't do it!" But he does it anyway because he can't hear you, and there has to be a movie. It was good, though I wasn't exactly in the mood for that kind of "I told you so" frustration. Gene Hagen has a good supporting part as a nightclub singer with a drinking problem and man troubles who provides the key to the whole thing. Bottom line, beware the evils of temptation. Movie number 3 is one I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago, 1945's Hotel Berlin, directed by Peter Godfrey, which is about individuals staying at and operating out of the Hotel Berlin in early 1945 as Germany's losing the war. Bombing raids occur frequently, as do Gestapo arrests, people are trying to escape, and each featured character is under pressure. I loved this one. It felt like a large-scale film, but was set mostly within the hotel and clocked in at less than 100 minutes, time that was used wisely. There are lots of storylines to cover, but this is an excellent example of how good writing and good acting come together to make meaningful, distinct characters. And what a cast! Raymond Massey as a general in trouble for conspiracy, Helmut Dantine as a leader of the underground who's escaped from Dachau and is hiding at the hotel, Peter Lorre as a bitter, jaded scientist whose inventions have been used to exterminate thousands, Faye Emerson as an informer who hides her broken heart in exchange for a decent pair of shoes. Plus there's Andrea King, Henry Daniel, Alan Hale, George Coulouris, Kurt Kruger, and Stephen Garay, all giving great performances. For crying out loud, even Bellboy number 6, played by Richard Tyler, was a developed character. My one criticism is that it did get a little confusing in one spot, which is why I wanted to go back and watch it again while I had the opportunity. That, and I enjoyed it so much the first time around. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to do that, but I will keep an eye out for whenever it might show up again. Movie number 4 is a relatively short film from 1953, Deadly Nightshade, which stars Emrys Jones in dual roles. A runaway convict takes the place of his doppelganger, only to find himself in an even worse situation than if he'd kept his own identity. This was not a bad movie, I just happened to fall asleep on it and miss a good chunk of the movie, so I can't credibly review it. Movie number 5 is a film from 1941 titled H.M. Pulham Esquire, in which mild-mannered, routine-oriented Pulham, Robert Young, goes through a midlife crisis after two encounters cause him to reflect on his past. Though he considers himself happily married to Ruth Hussey, he wonders if he might have been even happier if he'd chosen instead to leave his social circle and marry the lively reporter he worked with for a time, played by Hedy Lamarr. Directed by King Vidor, I do feel like this kind of movie faded out of existence during the war. Audiences became less interested in these stories about a protagonist looking back on his past, on the good old Ivy League college days, and wondering what might have been. And at 2 hours, it's kind of long for a will he or won't he plot that doesn't fully deliver. But Hedy Lamarr is as lovely as always, and there's a fun supporting performance from Van Heflin as Pulham's buddy. Movie number 6 is a Canadian-made film from 2003, The Snow Walker. Set in 1953, Barry Pepper plays a cargo pilot who reluctantly agrees to fly a sick Inuit girl to a hospital for treatment, but en route their plane crashes in the Arctic. The two survivors gradually develop a bond as they learn to communicate, and she teaches him how to thrive in the wild. This was a solid survival movie with a good story, and I was surprised to spot a baby-faced Michael Bublé in a small part. I didn't realize it was him at first. I thought, that guy looks kind of like Michael Bublé. And then I realized, wait, that's actually him! I'd forgotten he was in a few movies before his singing career exploded, so this was a shock. Movie number 7 is The House of the Arrow, a decent little mystery from 1953 in which the adopted daughter of a wealthy old woman is accused of killing her after she inherits all her property. The version streaming on Amazon Prime isn't good, but it is watchable. The movie makes nice use of its setting, a big dark house in France, probably not really in France, but use your imagination, and adding an energetic spark to the cast of relative unknowns is Oscar Homolka, who stars as a charming genius detective who loves to toot his own horn. Movie number 8 is Carbine Williams, or Carbine Williams, however you want to say it. It's a 1952 biopic starring Jimmy Stewart as the man who invented a new lightweight style of gun while in prison. This weapon ended up being an instrumental advantage for soldiers in World War II. It's a heavy story at times, as Marsh Williams is a bitter man, an individualist who was caught with an illegal still and was convicted of killing a man who tried to arrest him. Jean Hagen plays his faithful wife, and Wendell Corey plays the prison warden who won't tolerate insubordination, but who is fair and truly wants what's best for the inmates. One of the best things about the film is the rapport that develops between the warden and Williams, and the story is told in flashback by the warden to Williams' son, while Williams waits outside, wondering if his boy will reject him now that he knows his past. This leads to a moving ending. It's a good movie, even if I'm not sure how to pronounce the title. Movie number 9 is a dark drama from 1948, The Sign of the Ram, in which Susan Peters stars as a wheelchair-bound second wife determined to keep her husband and 3 children close to her by any means necessary. It's a simple enough story, psychological and a bit gothic. The strengths lie in the atmospheric setting of Cornwall, which brings Daphne du Maurier to mind, and the performances, including Alexander Knox as the husband, Dame May Whitty as the local busybody, and Peggy Ann Garner as the devoted younger daughter. But foremost is Susan Peters as Leah, the scheming, manipulative adoptive mother who can't stand to see her family go away. Discussion of this movie is impossible without mentioning the actress's tragic story. Susan Peters was a budding star in the early 40s, earning an Oscar nomination for her role in Random Harvest, but a hunting accident left her paralyzed from the waist down. Her promising career seemed to be over for a couple years until this film came along, which was an ideal role for her. It was lauded as a successful return to the screen. Unfortunately, it was also her last film. She continued to act on stage for a while until her health declined, and she died in 1952 at age 31. It's a terrible story, with even more tragic details than the ones I've shared with you here. Knowing the personal background makes her performance in this film even more significant. Movie number 10 is a tough World War II film, Sisters of War from 2010, which tells the true story of a group of Australian army nurses and their patients who are moved to a Catholic mission in Papua New Guinea just before the Japanese arrive. The story focuses on the friendship that develops between an outspoken nurse, played by Sarah Snook, and a pious nun, played by Claire Vanderboom. Prisoner of war movies like this are very stressful, where you're constantly afraid of what might happen next. But this was a good film. It does have some nasty injury shots, and at times the editing and heavy use of filters and desaturation were a bit distracting. But the acting and the story were good, especially at the end. Movie number 11 is Man in the Attic, a so-so version of The Lodger from 1953. It's the third adaptation I know of, after the 1927 one with Ivor Novello and the 1944 one with Laird Crager. Jack Palance plays the lodger here, and he does a fine job. He's soft-spoken, gentle, just a little bit awkward and paranoid, enough so that right up to the very end you're never sure if he's going to turn out to be Jack the Ripper or not. I liked the first half well enough, but it did lag later on, especially during the long dance hall sequences. It's an okay film, but it doesn't supersede the previous two interpretations. Movie number 12 is 2013's Redwood Highway, in which Shirley Knight plays a stubborn older woman who decides to walk 80 miles to get to her granddaughter's wedding after initially refusing to attend. It's partially a roughing it movie, coupled with nice West Coast scenery, but it's especially about the main character's emotional journey and the people she encounters along the way. The film deals with the marginalization of the elderly and the frustrations of being told what you can and cannot do just because of your advanced age. While I do think the character's decision to make this 80-mile walk at her age and in her condition is a really bad idea, I understand why she does it, and I don't blame her for being angry at her son because he's a jerk. And movie number 13 is 1942's In This Our Life, which stars Olivia de Havilland and Bette Davis as sisters Roy and Stanley Timberlake. I'd heard of this movie before and written it off as a "you stole my man, now I'm gonna steal yours" melodrama, and it could have been like that if de Havilland's character had been different and if there weren't an underlying story of injustice and racial prejudice that the film wanted to tell. Bette Davis plays one of her most detestable characters, a selfish, spoiled girl who likes to spend money and drive fast, and who runs away with her meek sister's husband. But instead of letting heartbreak ruin her, de Havilland firms up and takes control of her life, eventually moving on with her sister's ex-fiancé. It's interesting that Dennis Morgan, who usually played the wholesome boy next door, is kind of scummy here, while George Brent, who played his share of rakes and homewreckers, is the honest, wholesome one. The rest of the cast features Hattie McDaniel and Ernest Anderson in small but crucial roles, and Charles Coburn is very distasteful as the sister's rich uncle who is uncomfortably flirtatious with his favorite niece. Bette Davis's performance is quite heavy-handed, with her character becoming more hysterical and unhinged the more trouble she gets into. De Havilland's character, with her quiet warmth and calm resilience, is the sister you root for, no question. But I found that no matter the film, no matter her co-stars, she never gave a bad performance. Olivia de Havilland passed away last weekend, just a few weeks after turning 104. She left behind an impressive body of work which includes many delightful films. With her passing, we say goodbye to one of the last great stars of Hollywood's golden age. I'm going to pause the list there. We are actually more than halfway through, but if I don't stop filming now, I'm going to start melting down. I hope you enjoyed this part of What Else I Saw in July. You can find a list of the movies that I mentioned in the description, and please feel free to share your thoughts on any of these films. I will be back soon with part 2. Thanks for watching!